Yeah, I'm very happy to have you here today. And yeah, I would like to say welcome to our little podcast here. Rutav, if I'm pronouncing the name right.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, happy to have you and would love to give you the opportunity for a short intro or longer intro and then dive into the journey you've been experiencing.
yeah. I'm Rutav, third year PhD student at UT Austin. Um, I live in Austin. I come from Mumbai, India. I then did my undergrad at IIT Kharagpur and then just moved directly to a PhD in robotics.
Is robotics something that you've been interested in very early on, or is it something that you just came across?
Hmm. I think I would say I just came across in my early undergrad. Um, I think a lot of it comes from being opportunistic and a lot of chance and luck. Um, yeah, in my first year of undergrad, we had this robotics group called Autonomous Ground Vehicle, where a bunch of undergrads used to meet and participate in this ground vehicle competition called IGVC. And it is pretty cool still. And it used to fascinate me. So I happened to join that group and met a lot of folks who had like similar interests. I think that peer group also drove me more into robotics. So I guess, yeah, more of being an opportunistic luck and, and great peer group, I think.
And before joining the group, was there something, was it a situation or the feeling of you, there is skills necessary that I don't have, or there's some more experience that I need to gain before joining that group, or was it something that you said confidently, no, no, what I can see here and talking to those people, this is something I can do, or was it somebody convincing you should give it a try? How was that situation for you?
Mm. So I think there's two parts you asked, right? One is like, what's the prerequisite, let's say, and the second part, I guess, is more about who pushed you getting into this. I'll just take one by one, and then so the first part is like, what's the prerequisite? So we were given like some kind of assignments at the start of before you get into this group. It was like a week long, kind of an hackathon sort of thing. Uh,
Mhm.
which you need to be part of. Even before that, there were some workshops held, which gives you some kind of prerequisite. Just to give some examples, the assignments given were more like A star, implementing A star, and those sort along those lines. Um, and I think all of us were like first year undergrads. Yeah, all of us were first year undergrads. So I guess most of us were on the same page. But it was very fun participating in that hackathon. And I think who pushed me into this, I think it's just, you know, I would like to say it's still being opportunistic and, getting into things that sounds interesting. Um, and my batchmates, yeah, I remember we getting into this hackathon, even though it was an individual thing, we used to sit together all day long and just, code it out. So yeah.
And would you say that this is something that came naturally to you because everything in engineering is there's a lot of math involved, physics involved, and different software hardware components if you go into robotics. Was there something, is that something that comes naturally to you, or did you, because I'm asking this because former episodes, the different kind of people, founders, but also PhD students or people in academia, they said that they were interested enough to do the courses necessary, but at a certain point, when they really got into or encounter an obstacle or problem that really forced them to become very good at for example, mathematics, to be able to that enables them to go further. Is that something that happened with you too, or was that something that yeah wasn't really a challenge for you?
Oh, I see, I see. So I think like in our first year, I had no coding experience, and let's say, being part of this team, I was part of the software team. Um, and then I had no prior coding experience, so I was just learning along the way. Um, I think most of the learning for me has that has proven to be very useful is top down. Like I'm into this project. Now what do I need to figure out to get into it? Maybe I need to learn this. Let's go into that. Let's go deeper into that. So it's kind of like a top down learning that I think has proven to be more useful. I think bottom up course wise learning, if I may call it that, um, I think it proves useful to build fundamentals. So I guess a mix of two is very useful. Uh, but top down is usually faster. So yeah.
So when you're approaching a problem, this is the way you're conquering the you're looking at what is necessary to go through to survive, so to speak, and then you just attack them one by one. I mean, this is a framework that works pretty much in every problem in industry, right?
Right.
Um, and is this something that you needed to learn throughout the years, or was that something that had been taught to you? Because my experience is that, no, please, I'll let you answer first.
Oh, I think most of it, it's hard to say discriminate between the two, whether I was learning on my own, whether I was learning through my peer, or whether it were the courses that were teaching me. It would be very much fair to say that it's a mix of all. Uh, a large component might still be on my own and with my peer group, my batchmates. I think a lot of drive, motivation, learning um, came through because of my batchmates in undergrad. Um, yeah,
I mean, how far you're into your journey already now?
uh, I think it's just the start. I'm just a third year PhD right now, so pretty much I would say start of the career. Uh, yeah,
I mean, the reason why I reach out to people in different stages in their career, and sometimes not an argument, but a discussion about does it make sense to be part of the podcast? Is I'm very early in my journey. It doesn't make any sense. There's not too many things people can learn from me. But the truth is, and this is something a recurring topic, something I say very often. There's always someone who is further behind in their journey, right? So there's always someone who just entered university, just finished high school, or just started their masters and or just started the PhD. And so there's always someone who is a few steps behind. And if you have the time and opportunity to go back and talk to your former self like 2 years ago, there's a lot of things you said, please try to ignore this, try to ignore this, or try to become better at this. So there's always some advice, right? There's always some learnings, hopefully. Even though sometimes it's hard to apply the own learnings, but at least you would recognize some patterns or some mistakes that comes along the way.
yeah. I remember having this conversation with you as well before we did this podcast. I think yeah, that was one of the reasons why I like agreed, and like I was like, yeah, makes sense. Why not share the journey and hopefully it helps someone else.
Hmm. So you're in Texas now, Austin, you said. Was it hard for you to get into the university? How was that? Do you mind to share a little bit about the application phase, or I don't know, the official English term for that?
Yeah. So so the application phase itself, honestly, I don't remember that much of it, but it's more like you have to apply through different programs in US universities. You have to give GRE, TOEFL, going through letter of recommendations, asking professors to recommend you. You have to write your statement of purpose. I think one of the most crucial part of that application process is like um, letter of recommendations. Were you getting it? How is your letter of recommendation? Are these people known in your community? I think that plays a large role in the application. And this
Mhm.
also equally important is statement of purpose, how you're writing it, um, getting a balance of like detail versus at an abstract level, what's your high level goal, why you are motivated. So I think that plays a crucial role. How did I went through all of it? I think I started doing my research. Like I said, I was part of this group doing robotics. So that was my initial push and like getting really into robotics. Uh, that's how I started liking it. In my, I'm just trying to recollect, was it third year? Yes. I think in my third year, I was cold emailing some of the peoples that I was excited to work with. And a lot of luck factor involved, but um, Vikash Kumar, he's in, I think right now, an adjunct faculty at CMU. Um, he replied, and I got the chance to work with him. And then we pushed that research into a publication, and I think that uh, was a really encouraging thing for me, getting a publication out. Um, and then I also like the whole process of doing the research. So I was like, why not get more into it? And then I was very much excited to do PhD. Yeah.
So enjoying the process and enjoying the process that makes it easier to reach the goal, right?
Yeah. I think it was very difficult. And I think somehow I started liking that. Um, I wouldn't say that the process of anything was very easy or that led to the liking. I think in the moment is always like you don't like it, but then eventually you start, the whole process, yeah, keeps you engaged and that helps you. Yeah.
I mean, if you are able to, I can't remember where I read it, but it was something that, especially very, very successful athletes, they're able to train their mind to get the dopamine hit. No, I think it was Huberman. He said it in one of his podcasts. So if you are, well, yeah, if you're a very successful athlete, then you are able to get dopamine hits not at the very end, like after the run, after the learning session, but throughout. So you're accelerating and you're seeking the process because you're able, your brain, or you're able to tell your brain, or I don't know how that works, but to give you dopamine spikes throughout the journey. And I think if you're accomplishing smaller things throughout the journey, like this recommendation letter I got, or this is an email somebody replied to, or this is the program I got into, or at least this is the first interview I have. So these are little spikes, right? And then they push you further. It's good when you go to the gym and have little breakthroughs that hopefully give you enough motivation, or throughout the journey uh, training your discipline so you're actually getting through. And when you say that a lot of things happen throughout the time with your peers, is that something that you said played such an important role that you would suggest, or it's a recommendation of yours to surround yourself with people that are like-minded because they can push you in certain situations where you don't have the power on yourself anymore, or that have further knowledge. And so there's back and forth of knowledge sharing and motivating. Is that something that you would recommend, even to those people who have a hard time finding those kind of situations for them?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a very tough question. Let
Mhm.
me see. So I think like um honestly, I think I've been lucky to find these people surrounded by me. I didn't have to go an extra mile or like, take a lot of efforts into building this community for myself. I can totally see why like some people might not be able to get that kind of access. There's a lot of luck involved here and chance involved. Um, but yeah, I think uh, it is important to have the right peer group. Um, Not just necessarily in your like they might not be necessarily in your own like academic um, topic or research because yeah I'm doing research but yeah but more important might be to have hmm, I don't know how to put this but like more motivated people um who are more positive as well. um Let me see. Yeah, I think that might summarize the kind of peer group you might want to have. uh hmm,
I think the benefit of that is that there's first the pressure of the other ones, right? So if he or she is riding, I should ride. If he or she is learning, I should learn. If he or she is now working or going to this event or going to this hackathon, I should do, right? So there's this peer pressure for delivering and accountability that you can that you might not have as strong when you do things on your own as a lone wolf. But also, as you said, the I think people say it's not the goal, it's not the journey, it's rather the people that are with you on that journey. So it's the situation, as you said, you remember back. It was not all fun and rainbows when you went through those things, but looking back, and especially if you have people that you're still in contact with, you can share those experiences and situations. Do you remember that tough night where we went in where we did an all-nighter, or did you remember that weekend where we almost didn't make it, but we made it, or we didn't make it? So I think this is definitely that contributes to this overall experience.
Yeah, I think like more than peer pressure, it's also like I don't is this called memento? Like basically you try to copy subconsciously the goals and the motivations of like the people around you. If I'm not saying the exact word correct, but there's a theory behind like people think that that what humans do very subconsciously, and I think that contributes a lot more than peer pressure. But yeah.
You know, I was thinking about peer pressure not only in a negative way, but also in a positive, inspiring, and encouraging way, because the the will of the competitiveness that may or may not lie in within us can be and it can be still positive, right? It's not it is I only win if you lose, but also it's nice if this person wins, I would like to win, and if you already made it, it's so much easier to cheer for someone else, right? This kind of dynamic, I think this is the main aspect I'm referring to. You were talking about research, and now we're still in academia. How is it for you with industry, a bridge to the industry projects that are being financed in academia? How close would you say, and how much of your experience is within the industry? What is necessary, what is needed, and how much insights do you guys get?
Mm. See, so first thing like connection of my research to industry. I think like I work on robot learning, specifically how do we bring robots inside human-centric world, like where humans and robot can coexist. For example, homes, hospitals, hospital, yeah, uh, buildings and hotels, those kind of areas.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that is very much connected to the industry, especially in like recent times with all this surge of like building general purpose robots, which is pretty exciting. So I can see totally how my research inspires maybe delta of like where the industry is going. Maybe a very small delta, but I think it does inspire. And also the other way around, industry inspires academia as well. Um, so I think in that way, I feel very motivated that I have impact. I would rather claim it's a direct impact on the industry. So that's pretty exciting. I forgot the first part of your question. I think you had two parts in there.
No, no. So what I was also interested in that topic is, do you feel that the gap between what industry needs and what you guys are doing, because you're obviously researching, and as you said, you're inspiring vice versa, but how far your environment and your the way you research, how close is this to the actually need of the industry? Would you say there's a big gap, or you might not be even aware if there is a gap or there's no gap?
Hmm. I think it sometimes depends on the project itself. Uh, like some projects are kind of like directly linked. You can just use this more like right now and put it in the industry. That will help you a lot. Some of them are more like two steps ahead, like, oh, what it should look like in future and what is the right path to doing it in academia, which I think is a very positive aspect of being in academia where you can think not just like one step in the future, but maybe even 10 steps in the future. and lay the right foundations for, industry or future research.
I have seen this in the past, and I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast already. Especially if you're in product development, right? So you're looking for a specific application that your solution can be valuable for. So actually, you would like to start the process going back from the problem. So you have a problem, and then you'll start building a solution tied to that. But as you said, you're always a few steps ahead, or you should. Some of the research is a few steps ahead, right? So you're not necessarily, as you said before, directly linked to a problem that is very present at the moment. There's no big pain point that needs to be solved. But like a continuously exchange between industry and academia can make, and I'm saying this fully aware of that not all research should be towards the industry, right? There should always be a part that is not making money, that there is no positive ROI in front of it. But is there, like, do you see yourself or friends or peers that there is an initiative or willingness to get closer to what the actually problem is in the real world?
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap and back and forth between academia and industry. So for example, there's this industries investing a lot in humanoids. So now if the expected prices of humanoids going down, even academia is even more invested in working in that direction, right? Um, so I think that is a lot of going back and forth between them. I mean, like humanoid was popular in academia way before, like quite before, like 2 decades ago, or even more, probably much more than that, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah. So I guess now that industry is invested, even academia is trying to use the same hardware, which is available at lower cost than previously. Um, yeah. Does that answer in some part of your
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much experience do you have in terms of projects with the industry. So I don't have that much insights, and we don't have. I think the scope of the interview would be too big. The scope of the experience might be too big for this podcast. But what I was thinking was like being on a shop floor level, for example. You said, for example, you said that we are looking primarily for things that are at home, and you can always try to rebuild a couch and a refrigerator and a television and a stool and a desk. But industry problems in terms the hospital situation is a bit more difficult, or manufacturing seem to be like a total different field, right? Where the requirements are very hard, very tough. There's a lot of automation going on already. So really squeezing out the last few drops and the last few percentages that you can increase profits. Totally different from the environments that you very often see in academia. So this was something that was in the back of my mind when I asked the question.
Right, right, right. So I think like, yeah, I mean, the problem that we are trying to tackle is more like how do we build a general purpose robot, right? Which is like that can coexist with humans. And when humans come into the picture, there's a lot of like unstructured, unpredictable environments. Like my kitchen, your kitchen is completely different. Today, my kitchen is different than yesterday. So there's a lot of unpredictable environment. There's a lot of unpredictability there compared to what you would see in any kind of inside factories or something. Um, so I think, uh, yeah, there's a lot of automation already happening in, let's say, factories because of the structured nature of it. Um, and I think that research is equally important. Um, but building the general purpose humanoid or robot would be very interesting and a much more challenging problem in my yeah, opinion.
Thanks for clarifying this. We were talking about you entering university, you entering the PhD program. S- How is it being in there? Is that I see a lot of students reaching out and saying, "Okay, there's so much to learn. The more I learn, the more I understand that I know nothing, and the less competent I feel, even though I get more experience and learn more. But how is it for you to navigate in that overwhelming field of robotics that has everything and anything? So to not get lost and really focus on something, because you said you're opportunistic, and that can mean very easily there's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity there, there's a job opportunity here, there's a lot opportunity to make a lot of money or get this kind of position in academia. So how is it for you to now be in that journey, be that kind of sailing boat in the current?
I see. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So I think there's need to have a balance between being opportunistic and commitment to what you're doing. Um, I think my journey for PhD has been pretty, yeah, I think okay so far. It's been tough for sure, uh, but nothing to complain about. Uh, and yeah, I think once again, I think when you're in PhD, the good thing is like you get other PhD students in your lab that you interact with every day. So that helps you a lot in growing as a researcher, as well as like how to communicate research ideas, um, how to start a project, uh, go with it. How do you narrow down your um, project into the specifics of the problem, what assumptions to make, those sort of things. So I think overall that helps a lot. Um, and I think you get a very good environment where you get to learn from others next to you. Um,
Is it a very good environment? Is how's the vibe among PhD students in robotics? Is there sharing culture? Is there I am, how do you say this? I'm happy for you kind of culture where I exchange, or is it everyone is a soldier and everyone is trying to survive? And how's the vibe? How's the yeah, how's the culture?
I mean, I can't speak for my group. Maybe it's a different in different environments. I think it's extremely formal. Like it's very sharing and supportive of each other. Um, Also, yeah, I get a lot of help from my peer groups, other PhD students in my lab, other master students, even undergrads. So we get a lot of help from each other. Maybe they have some experience in particular, a project they did in the past, and I need that kind of expertise so they can help me point in the right direction. So yeah, that kind of back and forth goes a lot. And I think I would say it's very collaborative environment, even though on paper there might be, let's say, two or three collaborators, the whole lab's kind of involved in giving feedback. Yeah.
Because I have a friend of mine. He is doing his PhD in mathematics, and he says there's depends on the group actually. So there's some people really sharing, and as you said, I need this expertise. I need to pick your brain here, and but then also whose name comes first on the paper. So who's on the paper. So and how much contributed each person individually to the paper, right? And who is presenting the paper, who is going to the conference, and these kind of things can be very toxic at least in some cases.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can see that happening at some places. Like, um, yeah, it can get competitive just because it's a lot of talented folks out there. So, many ambitious people. Yeah.
Hmm. Um, how is social media for you? Because a lot of people that I'm seeing and I'm talking to here, I saw them on LinkedIn, I saw them on Twitter, I saw papers, I saw other people talking about them, project websites, GitHub. So how is it for you? Are you using it? Are you more someone who is a consumer, or is that something that you started doing or will do in the future and becoming more of someone who is sharing and contributing?
Mm. I think right now I'm more of a consumer. I do share my
Hmm.
work on Twitter.
Hmm.
I share other people's work on Twitter, but not as a producer, as a like very active. Rather, I go offline for a very long time and then, yeah. So I think I'm more of a consumer in this aspect,
Hmm.
whether it's, yeah, I mean, GitHub, I use it all the time. Um, but not really open source projects. I've not been part of those right as so far. Not a
Okay.
big open source projects. We do collaborate in research, leading to these big efforts of collaborative projects, but not really like open source, uh, you know, very large community driven ones that I've participated in. That sounds very fun to me. I would do that definitely if I had a little bit of more bandwidth. Uh, but other forms of social media, and I wouldn't say I'm very active on, yeah, uh, other social medias like maybe Instagram or something. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, it can definitely help, especially in that sharing environment, sharing community, sharing culture, and collaborating. I think this is because when people are telling me they don't like Twitter, they don't like to be on there, and their feed is garbage. So I said, depends because my feed is great. The things I see, the paper I see, the videos I see, it's all about AI and robotics. And I muted a few of those AI tool list people, but except from that. I only see great content and I would yeah, consume even more if I had the time to it. And you were saying something about um, I mean the project are not being open source that you are participating in. I mean open source robotics seems to be a big topic. Every now and I mean every other day there's some new model, some new policy out there. Is that something that you said you are not actively sharing or not being actively part of it, but do you see this as something that you would like to incorporate more in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, we do share our project, my own project, and their code
Hmm.
base is always open source. That's for sure. But I meant more like um community driven, like maybe someone's making a very cool Vim feature, that
Hmm.
is that, I'm just giving an example because use a lot of that. So that helps you accelerate your productivity on day-to-day basis. So that's that sort of community driven projects I have not participated in. But yeah, open source robotics is quite, yeah, exciting. I definitely see myself being part of that at some point in future, especially with all these, um, you know, um, encouraging hype around robotics, general purpose, robot learning. How do we make that accessible not just to a few groups of people, but rather everyone? How do we build a hardware that is more accessible? How do we make data of these robotics, which itself is right now a problem for everyone, but um, how do we make that accessible? That would be, yeah, an exciting future to see.
Just had a conversation on this weekend about that. So someone who has a, let's say, very I think you would say realistic point of view, but I would say hope more a negative point of view because I like to be optimistic. I like to be hopeful for the future, but yeah, having all those humanoids in the hands of corporates, right, and military use cases are just around the corner. And we're speaking about households who can clean our dishes, wash our dishes, and then clean our put our clothes into the washing machine, but I mean, people are obviously worried about what if we give them guns? What if you have an army of them, right? And do you think is that something that is being discussed in the circles that you are around? Is that something that people are pushing away? As I said, I'm focused on this. There's a very famous book from Dürrenmatt, who is a Swiss author. It's from the mid 20th century, and the book is The Physicists. So it's three physicists that they are, I hope I pronounce this right. They are in a mental institution, and so but they had been responsible for a bigger weapon. So now the question comes, am I just someone who is following orders or working on their research and other people taking advantage of it? Or are you having a responsibility on your own as a researcher, what the product of your research can lead into? Oppenheimer, I think, was the most famous example of that last year in cinema, but I hope you get the idea where I'm going towards to.
Yeah, I think I would say that there is discussion, but not enough discussion as it should be around this topic.
Hmm.
about weaponizing robots, and how do we, curb that or not lead to that kind of use case of research. Um, but yeah, I think it's a very tricky situation. Most of us like have I guess when we are doing a project, it's becoming a more narrow local perspective that we are focused on. And that's why it gets harder to focus on sometimes like to the very extreme, broader, abstract use case of it. Like, I mean, like, yeah, representation of it. And yeah, I think there should be more open discussions around this topic. Um, yeah. Uh, I don't have
Mm.
much
No,
insights
no,
into
no.
how do we go about solving this, or, that's a very tricky situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was not aiming to find such a big, complex, multifactorial solution in those 30, 45, 60 minutes. But interesting to see your point of view, and I think the majority of people in the industry, in academia or industry, are very excited about the new accomplishments and are very excited about the things that you can do. And I think especially deep tech founders, they're really aiming. I believe this from the bottom of my heart that the majority of them, I mean, keeping in mind there might be the next unicorn CEO and founder, okay, which brings a lot of fame and money, but really having fun, as you said, in solving problems, working together with other people. The question in the very end, and we are not able to answer that, is does that free us from other people taking advantage of the knowledge and the breakthroughs that are happening weekly and really putting in a position where big corporates holding the power or governments holding the power of having fleets of humanoid robots that are able to do almost anything that we do, right? Especially if AI agents are able to do white collar jobs and then humanoids are able to do blue collar jobs, so to speak. What are we gonna do? So, I think the question remains. I think let's see how fast this will come.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion going around LLMs and yeah, large language models and their applications and military use case, whether we should open source it or not. I personally have benefited, let's say, from open source LLMs and VLMs and those things. But yeah, other people can take, disadvantage of that. And that's a very yeah, tricky one to navigate.
Now looking forward to what's coming towards you, of what's coming for you, what you're seeking. Is there something that you are planning thoroughly, or do you say there might be some opportunities that are coming towards me, I will look into them, or is there a specific goal that you're aiming at, or is there something that you're not paying attention at the moment? When you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years, do you see yourself still in academia, or do you think this is something that might not be enough, even though it's enough? I'm just trying to give
Right,
different
right, right.
perspectives if there's something that you're aiming.
I think my aim still, I guess the broader goal is still to bring like humanoids or robots into human-centric spaces. That's the broad goal. Whether it's can be achieved in academia or in industry, um, depends whether I want to aim for the North Star or I want to bring it right now into homes and trying to see if I feel it's more yeah, right now is a good time, then I would go for industry. If not,
Hmm.
staying in academia gives me the, I guess, intellectual freedom to aim for the North Star and, uh, yeah, pave the right path here.
The person I was speaking to, one of the questions that he had was, if I think the gap between the things that we see, for example, on social media and X, where you see a lot of people sharing papers, right, and videos, excerpts out of paper or that are incorporating papers, how big is the gap or the delta between what we see or what we have access to and what's out there? And I'm not talking about the figure three version, right? I'm not talking about the newest Optimus version out there. I'm more talking about here government and military. Do you think there's, from your perspective, and it doesn't need to be right or wrong, right? We fundamentally we will not know, but do you think there's a huge gap in between? And I will give my opinion about this later on.
Yeah, I think there is a huge gap. I think there's always a huge gap when it comes to between academia and industry. Like there's might be a big difference between making a demo versus building a product. It takes a lot of years. I just read somewhere that it takes at least 10 years for a demo to be going to a product. There's a lot of nuances that are always assumed, which is not bad in any sense because as an academic project, we're trying to test some hypothesis. So we need to make assumptions about the other things. So there's always like these different assumptions that you make in a single project. But for building the right product, it needs to be perfect in many axes, right? Yeah, eh, eh, yeah. So I think that's where there'll always be a gap. Um, but how fast can we bridge it is something, yeah, very exciting to see, especially in robotics because that is a whole new game now. Um, but yeah.
I was not necessarily only talking about industry, I was also talking about military. So is that something, because there used to be a huge gap, like this is only what they show us, right? So there's a little bit how do you say this in English? Like a myth. So this is something that we are unsure of. But from my point of view, I said that the brightest minds not necessarily might be working for the military, right? So it might be that they are in academia and then they are willing to have this entrepreneurial mindset, and then they are doing spin outs out of universities. So I think this is where and now people sharing this kind of work, because maybe 10 years ago already, but I don't know, 20 years ago, not having platforms where you can share so easily your where you are. I mean, you could build websites 20 years ago too, but the accessibility, now I have a mobile phone, I can film it, I know how to write a technical paper. And even if I don't write the technical paper, I'm just sharing the things that are happening in my lab, that are happening in my dormitory, that are happening in my garage. I feel my opinion is that, and here I might be totally dumb, and people listening to this podcast will fluting my DMs and telling me that I'm totally stupid. Um, the military is advanced, obviously, because they have the money to finance the gap, and the focus is very specific. So you can there is no industry standards, there is no customer that you need to find. So all those things, you don't need to do marketing, you don't need to make sales. You just get the money and say solve the problem, right? But I still think the gap might not be as big as it used to be. But what's your opinion on this?
So is it, I mean, I honestly have no information or,
Yeah. Neither do
about,
I. This is all
yeah,
assumptions
like,
here.
yeah, I have never actually thought much along the directions of like military applications of these things.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, but if I were to guess, I can see why the gap between access of information has reduced a lot over the time. I think that's just in general true. By now I can just Google things, and even more now I can just ask Perplexity and just, get a summary of what's thing going on. So I guess the access of information has definitely reduced over the time. Earlier, someone might have to look through lots of books before getting an answer. And I was just asking Perplexity and getting an answer in like 10 seconds.
Hmm.
So yeah, that kind of information access gap has reduced significantly, which leads to faster progress for sure. Uh, so as a corollary of that, even military has the same benefits of it. Um, I'm actually not much aware on how are they using these technologies um, right now. As you said, they might not even share it with us in public. Um, but yeah, um, I think it's tricky to say. Yeah, there.
Yeah, never mind. This was just it just came up through us talking. As we're coming towards the end of our interview, I'm always seeking for some. I'm either asking what's coming towards you, but this is something that I covered already. So I'm always asking for some advice, right? Every now and then, I have a little one now, and sometimes I see fathers, and just randomly I'm asking them for advice. And people are sometimes, because we're in a normal conversation, and then I'm asking for something that could be very profound, right? So sometimes I ask, so if there would be one advice that you can share with me, well, what would it be? And if you can share one or two advices with people that are a little further behind in their journey, or might be even further in their journey, but maybe lost and looking for for opportunities to getting out of the plateau. Is there something that comes up to your mind easily or naturally that you would like to give your
Mhm.
peers or to your former self?
I see. Um, might have to think a little bit. I think I would go mm, for summarizing what I said earlier. I think from my own experience, um, I think in order to move forward, it's important to have a broad goal in your career, uh, and that goal needs to make sense to you. Um, in order to work towards it, I think you need to lot of perseverance. Um, yeah, you need to be opportunistic, also optimistic about the future. Um, yeah, I think it's yeah. I don't think any journey is easy, or journey is difficult. Um, yeah. So how do you navigate that is something you have to figure out. Um, yeah, I think and enjoying the process always helps moving towards that.
Is there something that you do need to remind yourself, or is it something that you are naturally doing, or because there's a lot of uh, articles and blog posts and videos and tutorials about being mindful and being present and all that. Is there something that you taught yourself or have been taught? How's that?
Yeah, that's a very good point actually. So I feel like it's very hard, and I guess people don't. I've not seen much uh people talking about it, but like even in different stages, you need different sort of motivations. So for example, from a research project perspective, at the start of the project, there's a different sort of motivation you need to keep going, and then while doing the actual, let's say, coding part where you're stuck for days on something and you need to get out of it. You need a different sort of motivation. Um, although all of them, and at the end, maybe there's a deadline pressure that's pushing you out, right? But all of that are still tied to a broader goal. And I think you need a different kind of motivation that works best for you at every stage. And I think learning that for yourself is also equally, uh, yeah, something you need to figure out on the way. I don't have a concrete like what I do, but I guess reading other people, you know, articles and good books help a lot. Um, just to give you some example, why I said books, um, there's this book by Bird by Bird by Annie Lamott, right? That Annie Lamott, I think. I'm not sure about the author's exact pronunciation of the name, but it's called Bird by Bird. And reading that helped me um, kind of motivate, well, not motivate, but like inspired to write confidently about my own research papers, let's say, right? It's not particularly about, it's about writing, but not really about research writing. But as I read about it, how she went through the struggles of writing, um, and how she also faces the same things that I do, the doubts, the process of going back and forth, the process of taking in feedback and incorporating it, helped me realize that, oh, it's common to everyone. And I guess, yeah, how do you navigate that part is something I learned from that book. So I guess reading helps a lot. There might be many instances and many examples. I just something that came to my mind. Yeah.
Awesome. And hopefully this episode will be to some extent helpful for someone else listening and being in their journey. So I'm very thankful that you took the time. And yeah, I wish you all the best for the continuing time in that program. And again, I'm happy that you said yes, because I know for sure that there will be at least a few people saying, it does make sense. This part or another, and yeah, even gave a book recommendation. I think this is always a good thing. Thanks and take care.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye bye.